And when we talk about renal tumors, we have to remember that most of the tumors that arise in the kidney are epithelial tumors. You, of course, can get other things like sarcomas, like in any other organ system, but majority of the tumors are renal epithelial tumors. And the majority of the tumors that you will encounter in your surgical pathology practice are tumors that have been excised because they are malignant. And so the majority of these tumors in surgical specimens are malignant. Rarely you'll come across tumors which are benign, and the most common benign tumor of the kidney in autopsy series are papillary adenomas, but most commonly the tumor which is benign that you will encounter in your surgical practice is oncocytoma. Now, when we talk about renal tumors, which are epithelial or epithelioid in nature, arising in the kidney, these are some of the differential diagnoses that need to be entertained of renal cell carcinoma. This includes urothelial carcinoma, which of course arises from the urothelium of the renal pelvis or the calyces, epithelioid angiomyolipoma, which is not an epithelial tumor at all, but can have epithelial-like cells, and hence the term epithelioid. And then, of course, metastases. Now, metastases to the kidney are extremely rare. And in a patient who has a diagnosis, let's say, of lung cancer, the presence of a synchronous tumor in the kidney is way more common than actually finding metastatic tumor of the lung in the kidney. So extremely rare, but something that needs to be kept in mind. Now, oftentimes when I talk to a first-year pathologist who comes, first-year resident who comes to sign out in our service, and we have a kidney tumor, the diagnosis they come forth is, oh, yeah, this is a renal cell carcinoma. And I always kind of stop them there, because renal cell carcinoma is just an umbrella term, right? Because it covers a heterogeneous group of malignant tumors that arise from the tubular epithelial cells. So you can never have a diagnosis of renal cell carcinoma. There should be something that comes before that, which basically tells you what kind of renal cell carcinoma it is, because these are all very different biologically. They are unique because they have distinct histological appearance, they have distinct immunohistochemical profile, molecular signatures, and some of these tumors have very characteristic clinical scenarios in which these tumors develop. Now, with respect to epidemiology, these tumors form about 2% of cancers globally and about 2% of cancer deaths. So not that common with respect to mortality. In men, this is the 7th most common cancer, and it's the 10th most common cancer in women. This tumor continues to be more common in the higher income countries, mostly in North America and Europe. But the incidence of these tumors is rising globally. So you will also come across these tumors in your practice around the world. With respect to etiology, just a few things. We see these tumors more common in obese individuals, people, especially if you gain weight after or at the age of 50 years, if your BMI is very high, there is a higher chance of developing these tumors. Again, smoking, renal cell carcinoma is more common in individuals who are smokers than those who have never smoked. They're also associated with hypertension, and also, the treatment of hypertension. Certain diuretics which are associated with acute kidney injury may also kind of contribute to the development of these tumors. You all are probably familiar with the fact that acquired cystic disease is increases the risk for the development of cancers. They're 100 times more likely than general population to develop RCC. So that's a very strong correlation there. And then occupational exposure to certain substances like trichloroethylene has been associated with higher risk for clear cell RCC. And of course, there are a host of different kind of mutations and genetic susceptibilities to these various genes that are listed here, which are associated with the development of renal cell carcinomas. Now, renal cell carcinoma classification has really evolved over time, and as you can see, from 1970 to present day, the number of tumors has not only expanded from 2 tumors to 21 different subtypes now that we know of, but there has also been a change in nomenclature, there has also been more advancement on the classification of these tumors based on their genetic or molecular characteristics. Having said that, one has to be very careful because molecularly defined tumors can have a very broad morphological spectrum, and therefore this genotype phenotype correlation is not always unequivocal in renal cell carcinomas. What I mean to say is that if there's a particular kind of growth pattern, you cannot say that, oh, because this growth pattern is there, this is a particular kind of genetically associated or molecularly associated renal cell carcinoma, because they, now we know, have a very heterogeneous kind of morphological presentation. Anyway, having said that, I think it's quite understandable that there has been this shift of, classification based just on histology, immunohistology, and now we are going towards that phase where these tumors are being classified based on their molecular profile. We haven't reached the stage of what people do in hematology, but we are kind of slowly inching there, and therefore these classifications kind of become certainly challenging. And you can see here, this is the current, it's a table showing the current classification of renal cell carcinomas, and see there is this big group here of molecularly defined renal cell carcinomas, and you have quite a few tumors that have been listed in this particular category. And you can look at the morphology, you can do some immunohistochemical stains, but more often than not, you may have to do molecular testing to actually come to these diagnoses. Now, in addition to these different, almost 21 different subtypes of renal carcinomas, there are certain tumors which are not included currently in the WHO classification, but they're emerging tumors. These are the ones that are listed here to your left, and you can see where they are present in the current WHO classification. For example, papillary renal neoplasm with reverse polarity, or PRNRP, is not a distinct category right now. It is still included in the category of papillary renal cell carcinoma, despite the fact that they have very characteristic mutational status. And you can see many of these tumors that are listed here have characteristic of, you can say, molecular alterations that are seen in association with these tumors. So, unfortunately, the list is very long, and it can be exhausting for a trainee to really kind of familiarize themselves with these different subtypes. But I just want to reassure you that most of the tumors that you will encounter in your practice will fall into these major categories, and clear cell RCC still remains the most common subtype of renal cell carcinoma. Now, why do we subclassify RCCs? Well, just like in any other tumor arising in any other organ system, it is important because of prognostic information that we get from subclassifying the tumors, which then informs the treatment and management of these different renal cell carcinoma subtypes. So let's briefly look at it. So we have tumors which are benign. So if you identify something as oncocytoma and the tumor is out, what we're telling the patient is, you don't have to worry about this tumor recurring or metastasizing. So that's important. We also know that there are certain tumors which are listed here, which are indolent. That means over a long period of time, we have been observing these tumors and they hardly, if ever, metastasize. So these are basically, you're telling them that, again, you're telling the patient that they have very good prognosis. So with respect to the more common tumors, clear cell RCC is got a better prognosis compared to papillary RCC, and chromophobe RCC has the best compared to these two. And then tumors like collecting duct carcinomas and medullary carcinomas have a much more graver prognosis. So when you give that diagnosis to the patient, we are really kind of telling them that their lifespan can be really reduced because of the presence of these tumors. Now, the treatment of clear cell RCCs across the board is surgical excision, whether it's partial nephrectomy or radical nephrectomy. However, once these tumors metastasize or they're advanced because there's local extension or they've spread, then you have to treat them with systemic targeted therapies, and there are various different types of therapies that have been recommended for these different tumor subtypes, which are listed here. And there is also some role of immune checkpoint inhibitors, especially in sarcomatoid renal cell carcinomas. Now, for these tumors, for the diagnosis, histopathological diagnosis of these tumors, it's very important to have a systematic approach. And this actually holds true for any tumor, right? You want to evaluate it very carefully during gross exam at the grossing table. So the prosectors who are handling these specimens are the ones who are really kind of contributing a lot to the diagnosis and staging of these tumors. The gross evaluation is extremely important. Then once the slides are ready, of course, we look at these under H&E and do a histological evaluation, come up with a differential diagnosis, then probably do some immunostains if needed, and then if required, we may even do molecular testing for developing the molecular profile. And all these we do understanding what the clinical findings are in this patient. So everything is done. There has to be a holistic approach for the diagnosis of these tumors. Now, I cannot re-emphasize the importance of gross evaluation, extremely important. We have to know the location of the tumor, the size of the tumor, whether it's multifocal, unifocal, what is the color of the tumor, whether it's circumscribed or encapsulated or infiltrating. Does it have a cystic component? Is it predominantly cystic or entirely cystic, for example? Necrosis is another thing that we need to really look for because it is an independent prognostic parameter in clear cell RCC, so we really need to document that. And of course, we look at certain special characteristics on gross examination, for example, the presence of a central stellate scar, which may kind of help us at least develop a differential diagnosis. So let's talk about location, cortical versus medullary. Many of these tumors are cortical, some tumors are medullary, like the collecting duct carcinomas. The tumors can be exophytic or endophytic. That's important when we are kind of evaluating them for staging. Again, we have to look at these tumors carefully if they're exophytic to see if they're going into the perinephric fat. If they are kind of endophytic, then you have to see whether they're extending into the renal sinus or the renal vein or the pelvic calyceal system. So all this is important when you're looking at the tumor at your grossing table. So here is some kind of cartoon that I made. You can see here to your left, you have this tumor which has a nice kind of smooth interface with the perinephric fat here. This is an exophytic smooth exophytic tumor which is protruding into the fat. Here's another tumor which is more central in location, but it has again got a very smooth interface with the renal sinus fat. And then you have tumors like this where the interface is kind of irregular. And then you have these discrete nodules further out in the perinephric fat. Or here the central tumor again, you can see it's kind of irregular, and then you have these kind of circumscribed nodules that you see in the renal sinus fat. When you see this kind of nodules, it almost invariably represents tumor present within tributaries of the renal vein. So that is very important to document. And if you take sections from there, you will see that this is all examples of a spread of the tumor beyond the kidney. So these are all examples of PT3A tumors that have gone beyond the kidney. Here's another example. When you have a tumor in the superior pole of the kidney, it may directly extend into the adrenal gland, which is shown up there, and that may be then indicative of extension directly into the adrenal gland. And then centrally, I'm just trying to document or show you how we have to see if the tumor is encroaching upon the pelvic calyceal system or infiltrating it. So you have to take sections from all this to document extension. Now, here is an example where there is tumor, but this tumor is distinct from the tumor that you see in the adrenal gland. That's important because this will represent metastases and not direct extension. So all these things are important to document when you're looking at a tumor. Here is an example of a tumor which is extending into the renal vein, and that can happen. And then, of course, you need to also look at the note and see if the tumor is going beyond the renal vein into the IVC or not. And then sometimes you will also get sections or segments of that IVC along with the main specimen. And then you want to kind of take sections from there to see if they are infiltrating the wall of the IVC or the renal vein.
Sorry to interrupt, ma'am. Could you please use the laser pointer, the big pointer? The audience wants to. Yes, ma'am.
Sometimes it was disappearing. I was trying to, it just disappears at times. But is it better now? Can you see it?
Yes, ma'am. I can see the arrow. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that. Is there something else that I can use?
There is a one called the laser. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, the laser pointer. Is that something that you can see?
The
I don't know.
previous was better, ma'am. The laser one is better because it comes as a round dot kind of a thing.
Okay, laser
From
pointer.
left, I suppose. Yes,
Is
ma'am.
that better? Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
I apologize. So thank you for bringing it to my attention. And okay, so awesome. So let's go on to the size. So I hope you guys could see and really the previous slides was just to try to show you how important it is to document the relationship of the tumor to the various adjacent organs or the perinephric fat, renal sinus, and also with the collecting system. Okay, so let's go on to the size. Size, of course, we have to look at the 3 dimensions of the tumor, and the largest measurement determines the stage of these tumors in organ-confined tumors. So accurate measurements are essential. I keep telling all my trainees that, make sure if, especially the tumor is confined to the kidney, then you have to know the cutoffs. Those are 4 centimeters, 7 and 10 centimeters, because that will really change the stage of these tumors. Now let's go to color. Now, kidney tumors, unlike any other tumors in the genitourinary tract, the gross description is extremely important and color is important. So here is a tumor which has this very characteristic, what we call mahogany brown appearance, circumscribed with this kind of central scar you can see here. Here's another tumor with a similar kind of appearance, more darker than the surrounding renal parenchyma. And here is another tumor which is again circumscribed, but it is kind of paler than the normal renal parenchyma. Another example of the same, paler than the adjacent renal parenchyma, but not quite yellow in appearance. Here is another tumor which is very, very yellow, or we can call it golden yellow in color. Here is a tumor which has a very heterogeneous kind of appearance with yellow areas, areas of hemorrhage. And here is a yellow tumor which has these large areas of gray-white discoloration, which appears much more firmer than the surrounding tumor. So these are important because the brown mahogany colored tumor is an oncocytoma. Tumors which look paler than the normal renal parenchyma are usually chromophobe RCCs, and clear cell RCC, as you know, textbook appearance is that golden yellow color, but they can also be very heterogeneous in appearance, as you can see in this large tumor, where you can see a lot of hemorrhage within this tumor. So they can have a very variegated appearance too. And this is an example of a clear cell RCC with sarcomatoid differentiation. Extremely important when you see these gray-white areas within a renal tumor to take sections from here to identify the presence of sarcomatoid change within the tumor, and that, of course, changes the grade of the tumor. The next thing you want to look at, other than the color, is the circumscription, right? Is this a well-circumscribed tumor, as you can see here, or is it a tumor which has got a very irregular interface with the surrounding renal parenchyma? Or here is the tumor which appears kind of necrotic, but you can see it has a very well-defined capsule. So these terms are important. Circumscription, non-circumscribed, or tumor which has got a very well-defined capsule, so it's encapsulated, because this is the appearances of oncocytomas are circumscribed, but they do not have a capsule. Papillary RCCs usually are circumscribed and have a very well-defined capsule. Now, cystic change is something which, again, needs to be documented. Here is a tumor which has cystic components. Most of them, look dark here because they have blood within them. But then it has also these solid areas. So it's not completely cystic. It's a mixed solid and cystic tumor. Here you have a tumor which is completely cystic, no solid areas. It has this kind of bubble wrap kind of appearance. And then here's another tumor which is predominantly cystic without any identifiable solid areas. Now, these are examples of clear cell RCC with cystic change, where you have that solid cystic kind of thing. Tubulocystic renal cell carcinoma, you can't make the diagnosis unless you exclude the presence of any solid component. And so also multilocular cystic renal neoplasm of low malignant potential, which can mimic a clear cell RCC with extensive cystic change. And the gross is extremely important because in this tumor, you should not see any expansile solid foci within the cystic component. So if you see that, you can't make the diagnosis of multilocular cystic renal neoplasm of low malignant potential. So gross evaluation is extremely important. Now, with respect to scarring and hyalinization, it's not very specific, but you see certain kind of areas. For example, in this oncocytoma, you can see kind of central scarring. This is a pale tumor. So this is actually a chromophobe RCC. Sometimes you can see central scarring even in this chromophobe RCC, but usually for a multiple choice question, if you have oncocytoma and chromophobe, you want to take oncocytoma as the tumor which shows a central stellate scar, which is also seen on radiology on CT images. Now, clear cell RCCs can also show this kind of myxoid degenerative changes in the center of the tumor usually, and you will see this kind of hyalinization of the tumor under the histological on H&E images. So oncocytoma, chromophobe RCC, and clear cell RCC. So a good gross description is really half the work done. It makes our life so much easier if a good gross description has been performed and good sections have been taken to document not only the different areas grossly within a renal cell carcinoma, but also to document the stage of the tumor. So if I have a good a tumor which has been roasted properly, it literally takes very little time for us to sign out these cases. Now, clinical features, as I mentioned to you, can be important. For example, if you have a history of end-stage renal disease in a patient and the patient has a history of dialysis, and then if everything fits and you're thinking of ACD-RCC, then it is most likely the diagnosis, right? If you have early onset of renal cell carcinoma patient less than 40 years, right, you might start suspecting translocation-associated RCC, but just a caveat, remember that you can have translocation-associated RCCs also presenting at a later stage. So that age should not really kind of stop you from making that diagnosis if everything else fits. And then, of course, syndromic renal cell carcinomas are usually early onset, right? They can also be multifocal. And then, there are certain very characteristic clinical scenarios like the presence of sickle cell hemoglobinopathy and its association with medullary carcinoma and ALK-rearranged renal cell carcinomas. So let's come to what we do every day, and that's histologic evaluation. So after looking at the gross, having a good gross description, we look at the histology. And for the diagnosis, I basically really lay a lot of stress on this portion of the tumor assessment, which is the architecture of the tumor, the cytology of the tumor, and then look at the background stroma. And remember, IHC is always an ancillary tool, so you have to develop a good histological differential diagnosis and then apply appropriate immunostains to kind of come to a diagnosis. And then, of course, molecular profiling is required in certain instances. So don't throw a lot of immunostains and hope some of it will stick to the wall and make the diagnosis. That's not the way to approach any tumor in the body. You have to have a good working histological diagnosis. So when we talk about histological evaluation, these are the three components, right? You look at the architecture, then the cytology, and the background. So architecture tumors can be nested. You'll hear terms like sinusoidal pattern, alveolar growth. Then you can have tumors which are papillary, cystic, infiltrative, etc. Then you look at the cytology. Are these cells predominantly clear? Is there a mixed kind of appearance with both clear and pink cells? And then, of course, there are lots of tumors, especially some of the newer tumors, which are predominantly pink. Then you look at the cytological characteristics of these pink cells. Is the cytoplasm granular? Is it flocculent? Does it have well-defined cytoplasmic membranes? And then there are certain special features that are associated with certain tumors. Is there cytoplasmic stippling? What is the association of the nuclei with respect to the basement membrane? What is that? Is the nuclear alignment of the tumor cells? Presence of viral inclusion like nuclei? These are all certain special characteristics that we know are associated with certain tumors. So you want to look at these features. And then, of course, last but not the least, look at the background. Is it edematous? Is it mucinous? Is there a lot of smooth muscle stroma? Are there calcium oxalate crystals present? Are there samoma bodies? Is it very inflamed? All these things put together help us arrive at a diagnosis. Now let's look quickly at some architectural patterns. So here, these are all examples of tumors with a nested kind of pattern. So here you have these nests which are much more compact, and you can see this filigree-like, framework of small sinusoidal capillaries. So this is more like a sinusoidal pattern, and here you have these expanded nests, again, which are partially circumscribed by a capillary network. Then you have here nests which have this kind of more tubular kind of architecture with the nuclei kind of more peripherally aligned. And again, here is an expanded nest with cells having large amount of cytoplasm. So these are all examples of tumors with a nested pattern, and you can see there are multiple tumors that can have a nested kind of appearance. Here are examples of tumors which are papillary, right? Here's one tumor which has papillae with a lot of macrophages within the core. Another papillary tumor with mostly pink cytoplasm lining it. Again, another tumor which has this tubular and papillary appearance, and the papillae have this very fine kind of hierarchical branching. And again, another papillary tumor which has pink cytoplasm and nuclei away from the basement membrane, more kind of peripherally placed nuclei. So these are all different kinds of tumors. And this is an example of papillary renal neoplasm of reverse polarity, PRNRP for short. And then this is an example of a clear cell papillary renal cell tumor. Again, these are examples of cystic tumors. This is one where you have multiple size cysts here on your left upper panel. I don't know where this has gone now. Okay, can you see my pointer, the laser pointer? Okay, so here you have multiple cysts, but you have this kind of hyalinized stroma, no solid areas, cysts, but you have some solid areas here. Another example of just cysts without any solid areas, cysts lined by pink cells. So these are all tumors with a cystic architecture, but these are all different kinds of tumors. So that's important to know what are all the differential diagnoses. Now here is an example of tumors which have this kind of infiltrative growth. So here you have these kind of angulated gland-like structures or tubules which are infiltrating into this stroma, which is kind of more sclerotic, right, hyalinized kind of stroma. Here are cells which have got very, very high-grade cytologic features, infiltrative, eccentric nuclei with some sickling in the background of the RBCs. Again, infiltrative growth pattern, more like glandular with that hyalinized stroma, some kind of papillary architecture, but again, it's all infiltrative, right? So these are examples of the lower two FH deficient renal cell carcinomas, collecting duct carcinoma to your left, and ALK rearranged renal cell carcinoma, which, as I mentioned to you, can be seen in a setting of hemoglobinopathy. So then we look again at these tumors, tubular or glandular, right? Here, again, tubular kind of architecture, tubular, and you can see there are so many different tumors which can have this tubular or glandular kind of appearance. And again, now we're looking at the background, and you can see here the presence of kind of a mucinous kind of background here. Tumor is tubular and has a mucinous background. Here you can see the presence of psammoma bodies. Here you can see some crystals that you can identify here. And this is again presence of kind of smooth muscle stroma in the background. And these are all the different kinds of tumors. So the evaluation of all these components are important. Now, let's now briefly talk about the cytology of the tumors. These are examples of tumors with clear cell morphology, and you can see various different tumors, but they have also different kind of architectural patterns, right? So that helps. So that's clear cell RCC, chromophobe, translocation, clear cell papillary renal cell tumor. And then, of course, the bane of our existence as GU pathologists are tumors with pink cells. So here you have different types of tumors with pink cells. And this is an example of a clear cell RCC, which can sometimes be predominantly eosinophilic or granular. This is an example of an SCRCC, oncocytoma. And then, of course, chromophobe RCCs can have predominantly pink cells, in which case we call them eosinophilic chromophobe RCC. So it's very important. So once you look at whether, if it's a pink cell, for example, you want to kind of do a little bit more of a deep dive into the morphology of these cells, or maybe look at the cytologic characteristics a little more closely, and you will see that in chromophobe RCC, the clearing that you see is the pink cells that you see have that kind of flocculent cytoplasm, or you can call it like, just they're not very big granules or not densely granular. Whereas in the oncocytoma, the pink cytoplasm is characterized by these really kind of individually you can identify the granules. So there's very nice eosinophilic granular cytoplasm. It doesn't have that clearing that is associated with chromophobe renal cell carcinoma. And then, of course, this is just interesting to see. I don't know if you can see, where did my laser pointer go? Okay. Can you guys see this? Here you can see this little kind of stippling, which can sometimes be basophilic in appearance. Sometimes it can look a little pinker, as in this instance. Almost looks like leishmania bodies with this clearing around them. This is the cytoplasmic stippling that we see in the ESC RCC, or eosinophilic solid and cystic renal cell carcinoma. And then this is the typical SEV-like intracytoplasmic luminas that you see in the ACD, that is acquired cystic disease renal cell carcinoma. Here's an example of the typical piano key appearance where the nuclei are away from the basement membrane. This is the characteristic morphological feature that you associate with clear cell papillary renal cell tumor. And then here, just to show you this really prominent viral inclusion-like nuclei. Again, I'm trying to get the pointer, but you can see it here in the center. This big, almost like CMV inclusions. They look like big eosinophilic nuclei that you see in FH deficient renal cell carcinomas. Now, in the next few minutes, I'll try to quickly run through the common tumors that you see in the kidney. Clear cell RCC, yellow, golden yellow, can be variegated, characteristic morphological appearance with clear cells. You can have eosinophilic areas, but if you see these kind of areas in a tumor, then you know that you're looking at a clear cell RCC, however heterogeneous other areas may look like, because it's got that typical sinusoidal architectural pattern. Now, as I mentioned, you can get sarcomatoid features. So if you take sections from that solid white areas, you will see this growth pattern where you have tumor cells which are spindled in appearance, growing in almost fascicles. That's sarcomatoid tumors. Sometimes you can have tumors in clear cell RCC where the nuclei are eccentric and you have this inclusion like cytoplasm, and those are the rhabdoid areas within the tumor. But this morphology, I just want it imprinted in your mind, is the typical morphology of clear cell RCC. In any tumor which shows this, I don't care how other areas look like, but then this is definitely a case of clear cell RCC. Here again, this is just to show you necrosis, which has to be differentiated from infarction. In necrosis, you will see the pycnotic nuclear debris, which you don't see in infarction. This is important because it's an independent prognostic parameter for clear cell RCC. And this is to show you some of the heterogeneous features that you can see with clear cell RCC. Here it almost looks more tubular, and this is just to show you how sometimes it can also show you this vague piano key-like appearance, which you see with clear cell papillary renal cell tumor. So clear cell RCC is a great mimicker. It can really look like different tumors in different areas. Here you see it's so highly nice that the areas of the tumor that you see here almost look like they're fat cells, right? So for the uninitiated, this may look like something benign. It doesn't look like a clear cell RCC at all. Here is an example where you can see the cells are more pink, right? And you can see these kind of inclusions within the cytoplasm, which are pink globules that can sometimes be seen in these tumors. So what I tell my trainees is that clear cell RCC has this very characteristic morphological appearance, right? But you want to do immunostains if the morphology does not add up, right? And then the IHC panel that you're going to choose will depend on the morphological differential diagnosis that you're entertaining, right? You don't want to do 20 immunostains. That's going to really confuse the heck out of you. So just use those immunostains which will be appropriate for the morphological differential diagnosis that you're entertaining. So the stains that I use usually is CA9, and CD10 I use only when I'm thinking about certain differential diagnoses like distinguishing clear cell RCCs from clear cell papillary renal cell tumor, because clear cell papillary renal cell tumor is usually negative for CD10. So I don't use CD10 to to make the diagnosis of clear cell RCC, which I see happen in the community practices around the world. So it does happen. So CA9 is a good stain. Now, here's a case of a chromophobe RCC. Chromophobe RCCs are characterized by clear to pink cytoplasm, and they have this typical coilocytotic kind of nuclei, right? Very well defined cytoplasmic membranes, almost like plant cell-like. So that's very characteristic of chromophobe RCC. Here's another example where the nuclear features are not very well developed, but you can see there are these perinuclear halos, because here the cytoplasm is a little bit more pink. And sometimes, you can see areas of calcification. This is also an example of a chromophobe RCC. You can see the nuclear features. You can see binucleation very often in these tumors. You can get, large areas of hyalinization sometimes, especially in the center. And this is an example of a chromophobe RCC, which is mostly pink. And so you don't see that pale staining appearance of the cytoplasm. But what you see is the perinuclear halos. The nuclear membrane irregularities still remain, and the cytoplasmic, you can see the membrane prominence, right? So this is an example of chromophobe RCC. So when I'm thinking of, is it a chromophobe? Is it a clear cell? You want to do CD117, which is diffusely positive in these tumors, and CK7, which again is very helpful in this differential diagnosis that we are entertaining, right? Now, here's another common pink tumor, which is an oncocytoma. It's characterized by this nested appearance, edematous stroma, and this very characteristic granular cytoplasm. And the most important thing is the nuclei. The nuclei look really kind of uniform across these tumors. They're round. They don't show nuclear membrane irregularity. And here's a good example to show you the roundness of these nuclei, right? And that really helps make the differential to distinguish these oncocytomas from eosinophilic chromophobe RCC. So here is just a small table to show you the difference between these tumors. So both oncocytoma and chromophobe RCCs, especially the eosinophilic chromophobe RCCs, can have pink cytoplasm, but there's a difference in the characteristic features of this cytoplasm as is listed here. Cytoplasmic membranes, again, indistinct in oncocytoma, very prominent in chromophobe RCCs. And the nuclei, that is really, really important to distinguish oncocytoma from chromophobe. Now, the stains, they're positive both for CD117. They are usually negative for CK7 in oncocytoma, or you may see rare scattered CK7 positive cells. Chromophobe RCs are diffusely positive for CK7. So CK7 is a good stain to distinguish the two of them. And of course, one important morphological parameter that I want to mention is mitosis. Mitosis, if you see in a pink tumor, which, where you're entertaining the differential diagnosis of oncocytoma and chromophobe RCC, if you see prominent mitosis, then it's not an oncocytoma, okay? We don't want to call it oncocytoma with mitotic activity. Now, this is an example of papillary RCCs. Again, a very broad morphological differential diagnosis. You can have lots of different morphology in papillary renal cell carcinoma. You can have cells like this, which are more cuboidal in appearance with scant cytoplasm, almost kind of amphiphilic kind of cytoplasm with hyalinized kind of stroma, or you can have macrophages within them, or you can have tumors like this, which look very different, higher grade pink tumors. They all, these were called type 2 papillary RCCs, but currently we don't divide papillary renal cell carcinomas into type 1 and type 2. They're all just under one uniform morphological term of papillary renal cell carcinoma. One stain that is really good in the differential diagnosis of this tumor is racemase, which is positive in papillary renal cell carcinoma. CK7 is diffusely positive in the so-called type 1 papillary RCCs, but may be very focal or patchy in the so-called type 2 papillary RCCs, so that can vary a lot. Now, here's an example of a clear cell papillary renal cell tumor, which has this kind of tubular architecture, can have also small papillae within them, and they have clear cytoplasm and that piano key-like appearance, which you can see here, nuclei away from the basement membrane. And with respect to immunostains, these are diffusely positive for CK7, something that you don't see in clear cell RCC. They're also positive for high molecular weight cytokeratin. Racemase is negative, and CA9 is positive, which is of course positive also in clear cell RCC. But you will see that the CA9 pattern is a little different in clear cell papillary renal tumor. It is not circumferential membranous. It is more cup-like, which is basolateral staining of the cells, and that helps distinguish clear cell papillary renal tumors from clear cell RCC. They can also be positive for GATA3, and CD10, as I mentioned to you, is usually negative in these tumors. Again, helpful to differentiate between clear cell RCC. So this is just showing GATA3, higher power, nuclear positivity, helpful. So as I mentioned to you, IHC can be important, and there are certain specific roles, right, for distinguishing, for example, renal origin of a tumor in a metastatic site. You want to use IHCs which are specific for a renal origin. It is not required for the routine diagnosis of most of the common subtypes that I've highlighted to you in the presentation, and it should be reserved for scenarios where the morphological features are overlapping or suggestive of a less common subtype. So I don't routinely do IHC for the more common subtypes of RCC. Now, when we are evaluating for primary origin, use PAX8. Don't use RCC markers, CD10. These are not specific markers. PAX8 is the best stain to be used. CA9 membranous staining, as I mentioned to you, is what you see with clear cell RCC. Cup-like positivity is seen in clear cell papillary. This should be tumor, sorry for that mistake here. c-KIT positivity can be seen in chromophobe RCC and oncocytoma, but if you want to differentiate these two, you want to use CK7, which is diffusely positive in chromophobe RCC. CK7 and racemase are positive usually in papillary renal cell carcinoma. So these are the important immunostains in these more common subtype. Here is a case of a clear cell RCC. This is a case of chromophobe RCC. This is a case of a clear cell papillary renal cell tumor. I'm just showing these images again and again so that it gets kind of imprinted in the minds of the viewers. And these are tumors with clear cytoplasm. So there's a whole host of immunostains that you can throw on this stain, but these are common tumors, clear cell RCC, chromophobe. Sometimes you get translocation associated RCCs which have clear cytoplasm and clear cell papillary renal cell tumor, right? You want to throw these stains, and CA9, CK7 can be very helpful. I don't want to go through the whole list because, again, everything depends upon what is your differential diagnosis. Now, pink tumors can also be clear cell RCC, oncocytoma, chromophobe RCC, and this is a different kind of stains that you can use for tumors with pink cytoplasm. But believe me, I don't use all these stains. I will use the stain depending upon the differential. But CA9 is very helpful because it will help include or exclude clear cell RCC, right? And once you have done that, then you want to say, okay, that's not a clear cell RCC. Is it a chromophobe RCC? Do CD117, do CK7. And then, of course, if it's an epithelial angiomyolipoma, for example, all these keratins will be negative, right? And will be positive for melanocytic markers like HMP45 or microphthalmia transcription factor and cathepsin K. So knowing what your differential diagnosis is, you tailor your immunohistochemical panel accordingly. Now, tumors which have tubular or tubular papillary, again, your differential diagnosis may be papillary RCC, clear cell papillary, metanephric adenoma, which is another benign kind of tumor, mucinous tubular and spindle cell tumor, and MITF, translocation associated tumor. And here are all the immunostains that can come handy in kind of distinguishing these tumors from the others. So again, common tumors first, so use those immunostains which may help differentiate or separate out the more common tumors, and then you go stepwise and try to do other stains to build, confirm your diagnosis. Now, when we talk about tumors with high-grade infiltrating growth pattern, one tumor that should always be kept in mind is urothelial carcinoma. You want to distinguish urothelial carcinoma from a high-grade renal cell carcinoma because the treatment is very, very different, right? So then you want to kind of use certain stains, like for example, P63 is positive in urothelial carcinomas, negative in all these other tumors that are listed here, right, in the differential diagnosis. Again, it can be really helpful to exclude urothelial carcinoma, because I think importance is the management of these patients. So just make sure to not forget a urothelial carcinoma in the differential diagnosis of a high-grade infiltrating cancer in the kidney. Now, briefly, I'm so sorry if I'm running through the slides, but there's a lot to present, and I just wanted to briefly talk about the WHO ISUB grading system. So that is what we use to grade these tumors depending upon the nuclear prominence. So if the tumor shows prominent nucleoli at low magnification 10x, then it's a grade 3. If it does not show prominent nucleoli, even at a high power 40x, then it's grade 1, and then something in between is grade 2, right? Most of the clear cell tumor, most of these tumors are grade 2, but some can be grade 1, and of course the higher grade tumors are grade 3. And then of course, if you have sarcomatoid differentiation or rhabdoid differentiation, then it is a grade 4 tumor. And then you can have also tumors where you have these tumor giant cells. And when they are present, then you grade the tumor as grade 4. So grade heterogeneity is a feature of renal cell carcinomas, right? So you have to sample adequately, and you want to kind of as I mentioned, look at the gross and kind of target areas where you think there could be sarcomatoid areas, and then if you see a high, whichever grade, higher grade areas we see in one high power field, that will determine the grade of the tumor, right? So that is important to notice in a tumor, and you want to kind of make sure that you're adequately grading it. Now, WHO ISUB grading is not uniformly applicable to all the tumors. It is validated for these tumors listed here. It is not applicable for chromophobe RCC, so you don't want to grade chromophobe RCC because it is not applicable at all. And in certain tumors like these tumors listed here, they are characterized by prominent nucleoli, but their behavior is kind of relatively less aggressive, right, compared to a clear cell RCC with grade 3 nuclei. So it can be potentially misleading in these tumors. So that's the importance of knowing where to put the grade. Now, tumor necrosis, again, as I mentioned to you, is an important prognostic parameter in clear cell renal cell carcinoma. So please, when you identify tumor necrosis, do mention it in your report. Now, here is the staging of clear cell RCC. I have briefly gone over it in my initial presentation on growth evaluation, but just kind of bringing your attention to the fact that if you have a tumor that's limited to the kidney, then the size is important. And the cutoffs, right? Remember, 4 centimeters, 7 centimeters, 10 centimeters, right? Those are important cutoffs. Once the tumor has gone outside the kidney, the size really doesn't matter, right? But just when it's limited, remember that. And this all stuff I have already gone through, extrarenal extension, how you kind of look at it and evaluate it grossly, and make sure you take extensive sections to document that. And this is an example of a clear cell RCC growing into a muscle-containing branch of the renal vein. That's important, right? This is tumor involving the pelvic calyceal system. This is all PT38 tumors. Phew, that was quick. So let me just go through a few questions. So here's a case, CA9 staining in clear cell RCC is characterized by which of the following? 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the answer to this, of course, is circumferential membranous staining. That's something that you want to kind of always remember. Now, the following statement regarding clear cell papillary renal cell tumor is true. Does it show diffuse CK7 and Amicar immunoreactivity? Is it usually CD10 positive? Does it show circumferential membranous staining? Is it characterized by 3P loss, which is where the VHL gene is? Or is it characterized by an indolent clinical behavior? And the answer is the fifth one. It has a very indolent clinical behavior. And so that's why it's important to distinguish this tumor from clear cell renal cell carcinomas. The third question, papillary adenomas of the kidney have a size of less than or